with us. Some weeks ago, I shared about what I learned from a book by Kenneth Bailey on the prodigal son. Today, I'm going to share from another book that he wrote, and it's the Good Shepherd. Okay. Oh, okay, I think. All right, and some thoughts from another book also by a real life shepherd. His name is Philip Keller, and they're both based on Psalms 23, a psalm that many of us rediscovered in recent years. I remember at the start of our shared crisis, uh, many of us rewrote this psalm in our attempts to make it our own. It was a huge source of comfort for many of us. I want to revisit it from a shepherd's perspective today. So, Westerners, we create meaning in concepts. Concepts like freedom, democracy, and then we usually would try and flesh it out and illustrate it with examples, right? But Middle Eastern people do not create their meaning in concepts. They speak in images and metaphors. And then they let their listeners interpret and create meaning for themselves. We are Eastern people also, we're Asians, but we think like Westerners because our first language is English, and we read and we watch English media, and then we often think like Westerners. And as a teacher, I often tell my students about a general concept first, as in a general rule, and then I will fill it with examples. But I know that this alone is insufficient. It does not stick because it's not meaningful to them. So I find myself using a lot of analogies, often analogies from real life. These my students can relate, so they understand better. Kenneth Bailey, he gave an example from George Orwell. Who's George Orwell? Some of us know him. He's a writer of political satires like Animal Farm and 1984. So some of you took it as your lit text, right? Orwell took a verse from the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. Okay, this is the Tree of Life version. Let me read it. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the mighty, nor does bread come to the wise, or wealth to the discerning, or favor to the skillful, for time and chance before them. This is the Ecclesiastes 9:11, not a usual version, but it's roughly about there. Oops. I think I have gone like many slides ahead. Okay. I need my laptop here with me. It's very hard to control it from the mouse. Okay, George Orwell, translation of 9:11. Oh, 9:11, I didn't realize. Ecclesiastes. Objective consideration of contemporary phenomena compels the conclusion that success or failure in competitive activities exhibits no tendency to commensurate with innate capacity, but that a considerable element of unpredictable must invariably be taken into account. Exactly, right? You don't understand what is written. I'm trying to make a point. Okay, Orwell was making a point by about poor writing that is pompous and bombastic and full of jargon. Well, if you understand this, then you're quite gone case. Just joking. Seriously, which one moved you? The Bible in your normal version or George Orwell? Which one created more meaning? We have a tendency. So the point is, I mean, yeah, if you write it in abstract concepts, if you think in terms of abstract concepts, then I think it's not very moving. Okay, not very touching. But we have a tendency to create meaning in terms of abstract concepts. I'm not going to explain just now that translation because the Bible's translation is much better. Therefore, we take a lot of powerful images because we think in abstract concepts, powerful images from the Bible, and quickly translate them into code and logical concepts. Psalm 23 is full of rich imagery and metaphors. I hope to take us through them and allow the meaning to come to us and help us to feel God's heart. So let's read the entire psalm first. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths. For his name's sake, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So let's start with verse 1. Right? The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. David acknowledges that God is his shepherd. Actually, the image of God that is most common in the book of Psalms is not even a shepherd. Most often, God is described as a shield, a high tower, a fortress, stronghold, a refuge, or a rock. Yet, David chose in Psalm 23 to offer a more personal and human image of God as a shepherd. And he himself became the sheep under his protection. And he says, I lack nothing. It's hard for us to get into this frame of heart and mind, for us to really believe that we lack nothing. Because our entire life is in this material world, is saturated with messages that we need something. We need the next thing, and then the next thing, the next level, and the next level. Nothing will truly satisfy us. We are made to believe that if only we get the next thing, then we'll be content. Both by our media, by our family, friends, the entire society chases after this elusive next level. But we all know that when we get our hands on these things, there in its place will mysteriously appear another want, another level that we're going to reach for. And then we run after it. But the psalmist thinks of himself a sheep with simple needs: food, water, safety, and rescue from evil and from death. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. The traditional translation, makes me lying down. Okay, I mean, this is the traditional one. Makes it sound like there's some kind of force that God uses on the sheep. But the Greek Old Testament uses the word kataskino, which translates to settle down or rest. So he settles me down in green pastures is probably more accurate. Those of you who keep dogs, you can train your dogs to sit down and lie down, right? But sheep cannot be trained this way. Philip Keller, in his book, A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23, says, the strange thing about sheep is that because of their very makeup, it is almost impossible for them to be made to lie down unless four requirements are met. Owing to their timidity, they refuse to lie down unless they are free of all fear. Because of their social behavior within the flock, sheep will not lie down unless they are free from friction with others of their kind. If tormented by flies or parasites, sheep will not lie down. Only when free of these pests can they relax. Lastly, sheep will not lie down as long as they feel in need of finding food. They must be free from hunger. Actually, we humans are not all that different, right? We want freedom from fear, we want freedom from social friction, from pests, animals, and human types, and freedom from hunger. So, are we at a place where we can say that God provides for our needs, we lack nothing, and we can lie down in contentment? When we think of green pastures, we will immediately think of green grass field, which is abundant in our part of the world, or perhaps in pictures like this, right? Calm, rolling hills make you want to break out in song and have picnics. But nothing is further from the truth. In Judean climates, rain only comes at most 3 months of the year, from November to end of February. Most of the time, landscape and pastures will be closer to brown and patchy, more like this. So sheep needs to be led out each day to graze in the wilderness, especially during dry months. And shepherds need to know where to find sufficient pasture. This requires an intimate knowledge of the land. The grasses are often found at the top of mountains where water is more abundant. He leads me beside quiet waters. Even something as simple as getting drinking water requires a huge effort by the shepherd. Sheep only drink from quiet waters. Sheep cannot swim. They fear moving water. So if they drink from a running water or river and fall in, their wool will get heavy and drag them down quickly. Shepherds have to work hard to find quiet water. Often this means digging a short channel that leads away from a moving stream, or making a container and filling it with water each time. And the verse says, a good shepherd leads, often in a gentle but firm manner. A good shepherd does not drive or beat his sheep with sticks. Usually, the shepherd walks ahead of his sheep and either plays a tune on his pipe. More often, he sings his own unique call to signal his sheep to follow him. In fact, Ken Bailey says that it is common practice for a number of shepherds to gather at midday around a spring or well where the sheep mingle, drink, and rest. When it is time to return, each shepherd say exactly the same words, which may come something like "come here" or "sheep" or "come," okay, in Arabic or Lebanese. And the sheep will separately follow their own master's home. No confusion. Sheep may not be known to be smart, but they surely know their shepherd's voice. There are many such videos calling out of the shepherds calling out to their sheep. So I found one. These are sheep, huh? Look like cows, eh? One more time. Amazing, right? Okay, verse 3, he refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Now, we usually think that this is a case of a general state of mind, our state of well-being. Maybe we're discouraged after a long week, and then when we come together to worship, like now, or we have a good quiet time, and then we will feel all better. All that is good and true, but the literal translation of refreshes my soul is really he brings me back. Bailey says that this is about the sheep being lost and the good shepherd going after it and carrying it back. Shepherds in the Middle East share that once a sheep knows that it is lost, it will try to hide under a bush or rock and begin to quiver and to bleat. The shepherd must locate it quickly because it will be hurt by wild beasts and get eaten or even die in the heat of day. Previously shared about Jesus's parable of a shepherd leaving the 99 to go after the one sheep. How urgent he has to be. But I will not repeat that story here. There's another reason why sheep get lost or they struggle. David wrote in Psalm 42, verse 11, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God." There is an old English shepherd's term for a sheep that has fallen over on its back and cannot get up by itself again. That term is cast. A cast sheep usually lies on its back, struggling without success. Again, if the shepherd doesn't arrive on time, the sheep can actually die. And this is what uh, Philip Keller says in another book, the other book that I was talking about. This is the way it happens. A heavy, fat, and long fleeced sheep will lie down comfortably in some little hollow or depression in the ground. It may roll on its side slightly to stretch out or relax. Suddenly, the center of gravity in the body shifts so that it turns on its back far enough that the feet no longer touches the ground. It may feel a sense of panic and start to paw frantically. Frequently, this makes things worse. It rolls over even further. Now it is quite impossible for it to regain its feet. As it lies struggling, gases begin to build up in its rumen, which is the stomach. As these expand, they tend to retard and cut off blood circulation to extremities of the body, especially in the legs. If the weather is very hot and sunny, a cast sheep can die in a few hours. But if it's cool and cloudy, then maybe they can survive in this position for several days. So I was really curious and wanted to watch this, such an event. And in the internet, there's nothing you cannot find. Okay. So, Kashi. Got up, got up. Cannot walk. This is another species of sheep, also cast. Okay, I think the video is quite long, so it's all about the sheep, not just lying there. So, but it's funny, right? But it's pathetic at the same time. Sometimes we also feel like that, like a cast sheep, helpless, miserable, and certain that if no one comes along to pick me up, I think I'll be gone. But if my shepherd comes looking for me, he will find me. Next verse 4a, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. A valley or a ravine in Arabic is wadi. Wadi. Wadis are a common feature in Middle Eastern geography. They come in all sizes and are usually dry for most part of the year. But when it rains, great quantities of water can rush through the wadis in flash floods. Every now and then, tourists and locals who walk through such valleys and passes would encounter the flash floods, and many are killed each time. So when David talks about this valley of death, he was not exaggerating. The fear of death is constantly on their minds. Shepherds expect trouble or death at any time when they're passing through a valley. If it is not flash floods, then it will be wild animals, or it could be thieves out to rob the shepherds of their sheep. So I promise you this is the last video. Multimedia today. Flash flood. Another one. Watch this corner. Yeah, someone fell in. So you can see that is a very real thing. But many have used this passage to talk about the darkest moments in their lives. Often when we face death, and either in old age or in sickness, a rite or passage that none of us can escape. But if you notice, this is the exact point where the psalm makes a turning. Earlier on, God has been addressed as He, as a third person. It is exactly at this point that David started addressing God as you. When, when he passes through the valley of death, David starts addressing God as you, face to face with God, and has an intimate conversation with his master. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So, what is the shepherd's rod and his staff? They are usually two separate items that the shepherd brings along everywhere with him. The rod is less than a meter long, with a mace-like end into which heavy pieces of iron is usually embedded. The staff is longer and lighter with a crook at one end. Let's talk about the rod first. In the Bible, the rod is used to count sheep. Leviticus 27 verse 32 says that every tithe of herd and flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod will be holy to the Lord. Typically, the shepherd holds his rod horizontally just high enough for the sheep to pass under each one at a time. If a sheep is missing, the shepherd immediately will begin a search. Sometimes when we look at crowds around us, the thousands and the thousands of people, numbered among them are many struggling people with pain and misery, we wonder whether God cares. David's image of the shepherd with his rod counting and numbering us each day and examining us as we pass under the rod for signs of distress and illness, tells us that He does care for individuals and He would come after us if we go missing. We may be ignored by humans, but our Good Shepherd doesn't ignore us. He watches over us and counts each one of us. The rod is also used to protect the sheep from wild animals. David, in his account to Saul about how he takes care of a sheep, he will go after lions and bears and strike them with the rod. Clearly, he was not talking about the slingshot that he used to kill Goliath, but he used the rod as an instrument to kill the lion and the bear. The staff is a different instrument. The shepherd leans on it, climbs with it, and uses it to direct and to hold his sheep. The crook at the one end of it helps to catch a lamb that has fallen into a crevice or maybe down into a bank or a stream. It is a tool of gentleness in guiding sheep and lifting them without needing to beat them. Because it's blunt and it's rounded, it's able to apply pressure without injuring. Philip Keller says, sometimes I have been fascinated to see how a shepherd will actually hold his staff against the side of some sheep that is a special pet or favorite, simply so that they are in touch. They will walk along this way almost as though hand in hand. The sheep obviously enjoys this special attention from the shepherd and revels in the close, personal, intimate contact between them. To be treated in this special way by the shepherd is to know comfort in a deep dimension. With these images in mind, we can understand why this pair are a source of comfort to the sheep, because they're symbols of protection and gentle guidance from a loving shepherd. Verse 5, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. In the Middle East, a man's fame is spread by means of his table and lavish hospitality rather than by his possessions. So you don't go and buy an expensive car or a large house. If you want others to know how much wealth you have acquired, you serve them with lots and lots of food, more than what your guests can eat. Sounds like some of us, right? Sounds like last week, actually. Actually, preparing a meal in Middle Eastern culture is usually done by servants, perhaps recited over by women of the house, like in Proverbs 9, verse 1 to 5. Wisdom has built her house. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed wine. She has also prepared her table. When Abraham had angelic visitors in Genesis 18, it was Sarah and her servants who prepared a huge feast for them. But here we have God, the shepherd, showing his hospitality and showing us that he created mankind, both man and woman, in his image. Clearly, both male and female are in his image. Although we address God as the Father, he has both the best characteristics of man and woman. Isaiah 42 verse 13 says that God is a champion and a warrior, but there are also many other verses in the same book, no less, where God shows his maternal and gentle side. Isaiah 66:13, as one whom his mother comforts, so I will comfort you. 49:15, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. That's why both male and female are God's image. In our male-dominated society, even in current times. But we as the church should know better to honor and to celebrate both male and female, and to allow both men and women to serve God in the best strengths and capacities. Not just stereotype men as leaders and women as followers. And who says men must be the only ones who can teach God's word to everyone. I know there are problematic verses in the Bible, like 1 Corinthians 14, 1 Timothy 2, but have we really studied these scriptures to know for sure what they are about? I know we have started inviting sisters to teach, and I celebrate that. Perhaps we should teach from the Bible why this is right. But that's another discussion for another time. Another thing I want to highlight is that the meal is prepared in the presence of his enemies. I'm sure that even the most loving and peaceful among us would also, in our lifetime, have some people who do not like us for whatever reason, maybe our faith, maybe our guts, or maybe for no good reason. Well, sometimes for good reason, But maybe we have people in our lives who have wronged us or taken advantage of us, and we may desire to hit back and demand justice. But God is the one who will prepare this table for us, honor us in front of our enemies. So let's not take matters into our own hands. David shows the way by not retaliating when he was being attacked by Saul multiple times. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A bold and confident statement, especially for David, who's had his fair share of heartache and suffering during his life, some of which was self-inflicted because of his own sin. But we do feel for him in his old age when his children commit incest and murder, and then the civil war ended up killing his own son. But this is the same David who says goodness and love of God will still follow him for the rest of his life. For me, when life is good and health is excellent, when I have a good career, my family is well, my friends are still fond of me, it's not hard to say, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. But what happens when my body breaks down, like it's happening now? I'm having problems sleeping for months, and my body is feeling it. What do we say when we stand helpless, when our loved ones wither in front of us, or when we lose our jobs? What happens when our children don't make the grade in school, or lose their love for God? What if my friends walk away from me one day? These are the times when our worlds fall apart. And the question is whether we will still say, surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. In the agonizing moments of nights when I cannot sleep, if I'm able to quiet my own anxieties and my confused thoughts, I can sometimes almost hear God telling me that He is still there and He will help me to cross the valleys of my life, as He always had. Then I will remember that He has indeed been faithful in my life. There were many times in my life when He has walked me through the dark nights and the lonely times, the painful times when people have failed me, I have failed them, I have failed God. But without fail, when I turn back to Him and hold on to God, in the end, it will all turn out for good and for my growth. I would come out stronger and more faithful. Perhaps there will be further dark nights in our walk, in our journey, maybe more valleys of death for each one of us to cross. But together, if we listen to the voice of the shepherd, stay guided by his staff and his rod, we will all get home and will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you.